I think behind that question, what I hear is like having sex is just a part of being human, or like I hear having sex is a right or something that like I need to experience in my life, or like, you know, kind of thinking of Jesus like having that thought, or like imagining like people now being like, oh, I can't wait for this experience. Like this is something that I need to have, or is owed to me, or is just a part of life. And I think it goes back to the idea of how culture has infiltrated our attempts to form a sexual ethic around Jesus, and that there are elements of the world we live in, especially in America, where we're bombarded with these values that actually make it really difficult to imagine a possible reality where we can experience intimacy in the way we were created for it without having sex. Like that's just, I think fundamentally very difficult for a lot of even Christians to believe is true. But what we're saying is that sex is not required in order to experience the fullness of intimacy that we were created for. And so in the question, like how do we express sexuality in singleness, like looking at Jesus, I think a couple of ways. I think the first thing is to acknowledge that sexual desire in and of itself is not sinful. I think that's just important to name, because I think purity culture has taught an alternative view, like that your sexual desire in and of itself is wrong. And we see from Jesus that that's not true. Jesus never sinned and he experienced sexuality. And so that inherently is not sinful. However, I think in singleness, there is a call to actually sacrifice and offer up that desire to the Lord, and like to choose to offer your sexuality and to recognize it as something pointing beyond itself, and recognize that in a sexual desire, I'm going to try to say this like so it makes sense. Sex is not necessarily the ultimate fulfillment of a sexual desire. That's right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes.
The fulfillment of a sexual desire is intimacy. And so in singleness, allowing your desire to be cultivated in a way that actually points you towards the Lord.
Yes.
And there's a couple of ways I think that you get to do that. One of them is by actually like sacrificing the desire, like in the moments when you experience that, like recognizing it as an offering to the Lord. And then in another way, I think like in singleness, there's an opportunity to cultivate that desire in the sense of like not feeding into your temptation, like being aware of the places that are actually going to cultivate your sexual desire to end itself towards sex, like based on what like you watch on TV, the things that you talk about, the ways that you think about sex and sexuality, not in a purity culture behavior restrictive type of way, but in like a awareness of how you're cultivating your desire and a willingness to sacrifice those things to the Lord, in all of that, like in your singleness. I think that if we're cultivating like that the only end to sexual desire is sex, then it's going to seem really, really, really impossible to not have sex. But if we cultivate like the fact that a sexual desire could have a different end, like that there's actually a possibility that like as humans it's possible to not have sex like crazy, like I think that it is possible to allow that to be something that points you to the Lord and towards flourishing as a human in singleness, whether that's for a season or whether that's for an entire life and like an entire vocation.
That's really good, Molly.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like it, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you can stay tuned for all of our content.